For most of the year, the hunting grounds of the Cree are icebound. But in the brief northern summer, these stretches of forest are connected by a chain of lakes. Matthew Coon Come had us flown to the far reaches of Lake Mistassini to see the areas that Hydro-Quebec had wanted to flood. The young Grand Chief led the campaign that stopped those plans. But now he stepped into the middle of an even bigger fight.
We as Aboriginal peoples are caught between the disputes between the English and the French, constantly fighting over land which is not theirs in the first place. And we're caught in the middle. That is the dilemma, because of them wanting to split up a country.
Matthew Coon Come had brought us to his favourite fishing spot in the middle of the lake.
My people are hunters, they're fishermen, so they live off the land. So they come here and leave the village around September, and they look for small or big game like moose or bear, and trapping for mink, otter, etc. So they'd be spending almost 6 months of the year here. Yeah.
By summer, most of the hunting is finished. This is the season to fish.
So we're relaxing, and it's amazing just to be out here, out on the land.
The lake and its forests are divided into hunting grounds, used by Cree families for generations.
The greatest accomplishment of my people is not that we build great dams or build great pyramids or to build monuments for ourselves, but to leave the land the way it is, the way our ancestors saw it, the way my father saw it, my grandfather. That's the greatest accomplishment.
Though only 40 years old, Matthew Coon Come has seen tremendous changes in his own lifetime.
From the time I was a child until now, definitely I have seen where we came from just snowshoes and dog teams. Now we have skidoos and trucks, and when you get to our lands, we use airplanes. And the reality is that I think development will happen, but we would like to have a say as to the pace that happens, and to be able to at least try to hold back, delay, and to allow for our people time for the land to heal, a time for my people to adapt to those changes that are happening so fast.
The Cree have adapted and still kept much of what they had, but they fear that all that may be for nothing if Canada splits.
I believe that Quebec wanting to separate from Canada is probably the greatest threat since the arrival of the Europeans.
There are 12,000 Cree in isolated small towns throughout the northwest of Quebec. Mistassini is where Matthew Coon Come was born.
Shum, you be na. You matchy?
He became the chief here when he was 24 and Grand Chief of Quebec's Cree in 1987.
Let's come with her. Check has me gone. Let's come with her. Let's get the gun.
He's so popular that he's won every election since then by a wide margin. Along with all the children of his generation, he was taken south to Indian boarding school. When he was 16, he made the discovery that would shape his life.
And I picked up a newspaper of the Montreal Star at that time, if I remember correctly, and looked at the proposed map in which it showed that Mistassini Lake would be used as a reservoir. And looking at it more closely, realizing that the area where I grew up would be underwater. The area that I knew as a peninsula would become an island.
He was looking at the plans of Hydro-Quebec and its multi-billion-dollar project to dam the rivers of the Northwest. Without the knowledge of the Cree, engineers and politicians had decided to harness the energy of the great rivers flowing into James Bay. That was when the young Matthew Coon Come decided to become a lawyer.
My father used to say, you have to go. You have to learn the white man's ways, and you have to try to understand them. And then you'll have to come back, because we will need people that understand their ways, maybe to prevent from them carrying out these insane projects as we saw them.
But in 1975, an older generation of Cree leaders signed the James Bay and Northern Quebec Agreement, allowing the first stage of the hydroelectric project to go ahead, a deal most of the Cree would soon come to regret. An immense dam was built on the La Grande River. As the full scale of the project became clear, shifting Cree towns, flooding hunting grounds, new Indian leaders led by Matthew Coon Come vowed to stop its planned expansion. There were heated demonstrations at the site of the next phase. For Hydro-Quebec's plans had become so ambitious that they were making deals to supply electricity to the whole eastern seaboard of the USA. It took an international campaign led by Matthew Coon Come to stop the expansion. But the Cree now fear with some justification that the Separatists who run Quebec will revive those plans if Quebec gains its independence.
I think in the future it will be inevitable. Is it the right moment to do it right now? Or maybe in 5 years, 10 years? I don't know. But my understanding is that one of these days, anyway, we will have to do it.
The Cree know how much harder it will be to stop that development if their lands become part of a new country desperate for income. A separate Quebec will want to exploit the water, the minerals, and the forests. As if by the hand of a capricious giant, 150-foot trees are torn from the ground. "24 hours a day, all year round, these machines are operating in the virgin forest of the Northwest. Each machine takes 6,000 trees a day. The world that Matthew Coon Come grew up in is disappearing. Old Charlie Etap is the Cree tallyman of the land now being clear-cut. It's his family's hunting ground. The tallyman is an ancient Cree designation for the person who must maintain and protect the hunting ground on behalf of his tribe.
Because the only thing that they see in those trees are the dollars. That's why it means so much for them to take every tree, that they see on the land.
Huge areas of Charlie Etap's hunting ground have been clear-cut. The old tallyman says many of the animals he hunted have now gone.
Ever since the logging companies came in, so there's been no moose in these range of mountains that you see. And before the companies came in, the moose was abundant.
Before this happened, forestry officials asked him to mark on a map the moose yards and other areas of wildlife habitat.
But the following year, when they came in, all those areas were, these areas that you see, been clear-cut. Those were the same areas that they had identified to Quebec and to the forest companies for protection. Now there's nothing left of them.
There is some couple of examples like that fuel maybe some radical speeches.
Quebec's officials say these are all problems of the past.
The only area here in Canada that is left to develop in order to extract the natural resources is on Indian lands.
The natural abundance of Quebec's northwest has made it a battleground on which Canada's greatest question may be resolved. The exploitation of those resources has caused such distrust that the Cree refuse to put at risk rights granted to them by the federal government. And so they say they'll never agree to be torn away from Canada. But for the French separatists, these assets belong to Quebec and are vital to their future national interest.
It seems to us that the Cree leader and many other native people leaders are trying to make the people believe that those aspects has to be put under a plastic dome and not touched by the civilization. It's not possible to achieve that, we think.
It's always the case that we are asked to give up a way of life. We are asked to compromise. If nobody raises a finger, if nobody says boo, then they can do as they please.